campaigns. Have you seen any good campaigns of late?
I mean, in the Middle East in general, was the last time you saw a campaign that really hit you? Obviously, the ones that DUCKLIFE did were amazing. Did you see that Sarwa campaign? Was it not amazing?
That's good.
No, but
no, overall, I feel like creativity is
finished.
Yeah. Like there's so much graffiti all over the city.
That's what we're calling it. Graffiti. That's what we're calling it.
Graffiti.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of a single campaign right now that any brand is doing that is impressing anyone or occupying any space in anyone's mind. Like you drive down Sheikh Zayed, you turn on your phone, you browse. There's no campaign that is amazing. There's nothing. Even Ramadan in general. Like I don't know of any Ramadan campaign that has caught the market. You know what I mean? I think. Yeah. But if we kind of rewind a little bit and we try to understand why, and let's give the benefit of the doubt to the market, I think brands and companies are basically navigating between two tough spots, which is one, the instability, the insecurity of the market generally. So kind of any money being spent right now is hyper scrutinized. And I think people are a lot more hesitant to invest. And two, they're kind of building back from like a tough couple of years, right? And so the cash flows, the budgets in general are not what they used to be. And so I think you have the cautionary kind of CFOs and CEOs who don't want to come out swinging and spending money without any guaranteed returns. And then you have just the nature of the kind of beaten organizations that are slowly trying to rebuild and hence not in a good shape or creative space to execute. Now that's kind of the argument or the benefit of the doubt.
I can
fundamentally DUCKLIFE being in the position that we're in, having customers, we have, what is that, 12, 14 customers at the moment. I mean, it's very different. Like the amount of business that we have today in terms of the scope versus what we used to do in the past, the amount of campaign versus hygiene, the amount of campaign versus performance, everything's kind of super shifted to short-termism. Everything is, a pill for this, a pill for that, but there's no, dealing with the symptoms. There's no dealing with the problem. There's only dealing with the symptoms. Right now we're being asked to just do short-term fixes for everybody. Yeah. Right. And so I think strategy is non-existent. I think people are thinking not even 60, 90 days ahead. I think creatively, no one has any balls. No one does anything creative because they needed to just perform and convert. And hence the creative teams are being asked to sit in the pit stops and not do much. And then, the performance marketing and growth guys are over-empowered as usual and are just, pumping every organization with steroids. And I think it's depressing because if you live in this city, if you live in the Middle East right now, brands typically were the ones that inspired us, and unfortunately right now there's nothing out there, nothing that moves the needle.
Yeah, I think talking to the strategy bit, I think that's important because if you think about it, if you're trying to promote your brand or you're trying to create a campaign or whatever you're trying to do, you're trying to garner awareness, and then there's a lack, I think to an extent, there's a lack of thought that's going in.
Really?
Yes, yeah, really. Thought that's going into if you think about the basics, right? If you have your brand, I mean, we're going through this at the moment, where you ask yourself, okay, we need to explain who we are. So we need to give, if we're going to do a campaign, we need to say, okay, who we are. We need to give context to that and drive awareness there. That's your objective. Execute on that campaign. Then there's the value proposition piece. What is your positioning? When you see, if I drive down, be it Sheikh Zayed or be it, to be honest, anywhere, if I go online and even look outside of the Middle East, see a lot of mixed messages on advertising, trying to say everything. So everyone says everything and nothing. You're like, I can't even figure out what I meant, what my takeaways of that kind of campaign. So I think the whole idea of strategy, I think people, and you used to say that, or you used to say this to me because I corrected it, but people don't keep it simple. Like, it's so over complex. So like a takeaway would be, if you're going to do a campaign over the next month or two, like basic simplicity is kind of going to be key to your objective. Like, what are you trying to say and do? And if there's 5 things, narrow it down to the most important. Number 1, just simple executions.
But I mean, without naming names, how many customers come to us with briefs?
Let's name.
No, I'm not naming names.
Well, we can beep them out afterwards.
No, but just because there's a law that you can't.
You're gonna beep them out. I'm gonna name.
But there's a bunch of companies that like every single customer that we have today, most of them decide not to move forward with us because we ask them just very simple questions, right?
Well, that's what I mean about the thinking piece.
We ask them, like, what's your value proposition?
Yeah.
Like, what's your positioning?
That's my point.
Right?
The people internally at those companies are not doing their job.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you get asked a simple question, what is your value proposition, and you can't answer that as a marketeer, you're not a fucking marketeer. You're not a fucking marketeer. Like, you have to be able to answer these basic questions.
Yeah.
Off the cuff, especially if you're talking to agencies, you come and talk to us, that's our time. Our time is money.
Yeah, so fundamentally, like, okay, companies come to us and they say, hey, Chris, hey, Steve, hey, DUCKLIFE crew, we want to do a campaign to launch our brand or to grow our user base. You know, basically they come with a very elementary, almost like childish brief. The scope is, we want to grow, basically. Help us grow. And you guys are so bold. Oh my God, you guys are so cool. Could you do something really cool and really bold? And it'll really, like, we need to, we want to go viral, right? So that's the fucking brief in a nutshell, right? That's like literally the brief every single couple of months that we get from somebody.
We should like share that online. We should do a template, like creative brief. That should be it. We should just pre-populate it for everyone.
No. And then it comes to us and say, okay, great. We'd love to do something bold. Who are we to refuse to get an opportunity to do something bold? But 2 things happen. All right. So like, what are we going to say to the customer? What's your proposition? Fucking deer in the headlights. Right? And then they don't answer emails. They don't answer calls. And then they get intimidated by the fact that we asked them a question, a very simple question to your point of like, okay, what are we going to say to the customer? Yep. Beyond like, hey, I'm over here. What are we going to say to them? Beyond just ride some trend. And that's when they go fucking silent. You don't hear from them anymore. And then they go to another agency and give the same brief. And the agencies that are smarter than us just say, you know what? Let me play these morons. Let me just create a bunch of content for them. Let me charge them an arm and a leg. Let me run my business. Unfortunately, we're not these morons. We should have been those morons. But
we should be there for them.
Anyway, every step of the way. Anyway, and so unfortunately, that's what the briefs are. Yeah. And when you dig a little bit deeper and you realize that and by the way, it's not a marketeer issue. Like, it goes all the way up too. Like, if you go to the leaders of those organizations, they also don't know what their proposition is.
Agreed.
So I don't generally believe that it's a marketeer problem specifically. I believe it's a greater symptom of badly run organizations.
I think that's giving marketers the benefit of the doubt. But
right.
I would argue that there's a quality deficiency issue as a marketer. Like, sure. Even if your organization is run badly and they're not giving you the answers, like, go in with the answers. Do the work. Like, do the work.
No, and then the second part of the problem, which I was just saying, so there's 2 problems. There's 1, the brief is wrong, the scope is wrong. And 2, you know, they want quality, they want immediate execution. Everything's fucking urgent. Everything was like, I needed it yesterday. Hey, Chris, hey, Steve, we love DUCKLIFE. You guys are so cool. Can you come up with a campaign for us? We're going to go crazy. We want to go viral. We want to take over the city. This is your opportunity. We are the coolest brand. Help us help you. Fucking awesome. All right. When do you need it? Oh, we need it next week. Oh, fuck these morons. Okay, let's come up with a proposal, a brief, a concept. We fucking work our ass off. We fucking kill it. We do everything possible. You send it to them. What happens? crickets.
Delayed, we've pushed
because
it. We didn't have our media
because the proposal has maybe a few questions that they couldn't answer, which are critical to the fucking process. And then they're like, you know what? We can't work with these guys. It's too much work. And so they disappear. But generally speaking, without sounding like I'm complaining, I think there's three main issues here that we're talking about. The briefs are wrong because the organizations don't know what their proposition is. It's always urgent because they're unplanned. They have no strategy. They have no concept of how anything works. They're just short-term thinking, and they're trying to get an uptick.
Yep.
Right. And three, what we didn't mention is there's always a budget issue.
Yep.
So people, it's like they come to agencies like they're going to a grocery store after like not having eaten for like 4 days. Like they want to eat, but they have no money.
Yep.
And it's weird. Like, if growth and your brand and brand equity is something that you absolutely need to grow, it's absolutely where you need to invest, right? Figuring out how to grow is the most important thing you should invest in as an organization. But those budgets are really, really non-existent.
Yeah.
Well, not at least compared to what they were like a year or two ago.
But also, I mean, hold on. Let me come back to the budget thing. In terms of a brief, like just so people have something tangible to take away, just add to this if you think I missed anything. Come with a brief. You should have a business objective. What is the business trying to do? So like objectively, you're trying to grow by X%, you're trying to grow a particular product, you're trying to attract a new audience. Is it, have you had a drop in monthly recurring revenues, or are your users down? Like, what is the business, where is the business point in, and what is the business objective? Then you would come and say, okay, what's our communication objective? So that's where you understand your value proposition. Like, okay, what is our proposition to solve this business objective? Because that's really what we need to input in terms of a campaign.
Yeah.
Then there's the almost, like, I like the framework, like get to buy. So like, we're going to get this subset of audience or this type of person, these people, to take whatever action that we're going to be doing by selling them whatever that kind of proposition is. So if you have your kind of your business objective, your communication objective, you get to buy, you would have your initial media considerations. What can I afford? Let me paint the city, but actually, can I really paint the city? Or can I just run a few digital ads? Like, I'll answer those questions internally before you write a brief.
So I think what we're trying to say is there's...
oh yeah, I want to talk on the budget thing.
Talk to the budget thing, but all I want to say is, just to wrap up what you said in terms of just general kind of highlights, there's kind of a gap in the market. Strategy needs to come back into mix. And if you're a startup, it doesn't mean this doesn't apply to you. This especially applies to you. If you're a medium or even a larger organization, this definitely applies to you, right? So thinking ahead of time. So for example, just a reminder, Ramadan happens every year. So does back to school. So does Dubai Shopping Festival. So does Eid. Everything happens all the time, every year in the same cycle. So you can have some planning. Not everything has to be urgent. Urgent is another word for bad quality. So give yourself a chance. And so that's number one. Number two, in your strategy, in your process, figuring out who you are, what you're selling, what your value proposition is, etc., is critical. And finally, budget is fuel. You only get as far as you're ready to put into your tank. And so, and so there needs to be some minimum kind of commitment, resource-wise. And the idea that, you can slingshot your way out of everything. Let me just put it out there. We had no idea it was going to work. It wasn't planned, and you cannot like virally take yourself out of a hole, right? It's not going to happen, right? And so don't plan for home runs, right? Plan for things you can control. Plan, do things with strategic kind of approaches, with rational thinking, and you will grow. You will. Hard work pays off, right?
That's a good segue actually into so. The whole thing, there is no kind of like silver bullet. There's like things that you can do incrementally.
Yep.
So like the definition of a campaign, I feel, is very lost. Like
very good.
Right, yeah, because
An important topic.
Yeah, if you were to define a campaign, like in the traditional sense, campaign is, hey, I'm going to go out and I'm going to run this large campaign and it's going to operate across all these mediums. But you could break a campaign down, or you could break activities down much more. What was the thing we had in Kadim, or it's 7 steps? We had like seven things that you should recipe, 7 things you should do. But ultimately, like if you think about like campaigns, like even an always on campaign, like social media, what's your, if you're big on Instagram, like what are your stories, like what's your strategy for stories and reels? So that's your always on, like what are the pillars of communication? That's a campaign, but it's an always on campaign. It's like a consistent content journey of creating content that is not necessarily polished. In actual fact, even someone like me who's like fat fingered when it comes to like creating stuff, I can create content and represent the brand and create campaigns that way. But in your eyes, on this topic of what is a campaign?
Want me to describe it?
Describe in your view the campaign.
So I think my view might have evolved over time a little bit, but today I would define it as follows. A campaign is first, foremost, time bound. So you've got a beginning to it and you've got an end to it. That beginning and that end can be close together or far apart.
Yep.
Right? And you might start with a campaign that is quite small in terms of its time or its life cycle, and you might end up stretching it over time if it overperforms or does really well. But first, it has to be time bound.
Just do it.
Like Just Do It, right? That was supposed to be a campaign, ended up being a lifelong, let's say, campaign, eventually part of a brand anchor. But first, it has to be time bound. When is the beginning? When is the end? Number 2, it has to solve a specific problem, right? So let's say you want to increase sales. Keep it really simple. And so you have a specific objective or a specific problem. You need to up sales by 10%, or you need to make $1 million in revenue extra, whatever it is. It has a specific business objective. What is that objective? Those are the first 2 things, right? The third thing that makes every campaign different from another campaign is a design system or a design language, right? Your tone of voice, your positioning, all these things are constant. Your brand is always the same. Your offering is always the same, right? You're only creating, the only thing that makes a campaign is some sort of design system or design language that feels unique to that campaign.
Which is an extension of your brand.
I'm just trying to keep the language simple. Right? So
just keep it super simple.
So all I'm saying is a campaign is like a design system, a concept, a creative language for that period that fits within the brand guidelines, within the tone of that brand, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't deviate from that, but it's unique in that sense that during that 3 weeks, during that 6 months, during that 1 year, whatever it is, you're using an approach to communicate that is very similar within a set of rules, within a creative system that all feels like it's part of its own thing, and it's consistent, and it's communicated across one or multiple channels. So a campaign doesn't need to be omnichannel. A campaign doesn't have to be digital only. A campaign doesn't have to be outdoor only. A campaign doesn't have to speak to all audiences. It can speak to a specific audience, right? So if you have, Gen Zers and, millennials, you can have a campaign just for millennials, right? So a campaign is a time-bound kind of project that is supposed to achieve a specific business objective that speaks in a way that is consistent within the elements of the brand, and as you would call it, an extension of the brand, but is that simple.
And right? You can, and in your view, can you have multiple campaigns running?
You have to.
At any given time?
You have to.
So I can have a campaign running that's really kind of targeting say the millennials to get them onto the platform, and then I can have campaigns running that are specifically talking about product features. And then I can have a much wider campaign that's much more generic, speaking about my brand.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
which is why it's important when you think about it from a planning point of view.
You can have big campaigns for the Super Bowl, and you can have small campaigns for weekend getaways, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
The reason I mention it is because I feel like a lot of the conversations that I have, a lot of people get very overwhelmed with the campaign. Like I have a campaign that I need to do, And again, that's that overcomplicating the issue or kind of the objective of what you're trying to do, because people aren't planned, not thinking through the different layers of the organization or the product or the growth that's required.
I think the reason why people view campaigns as these large anomalies that are like the campaign, etc., is because internally and we've seen this, like there are promos and offers and things like that are running constantly.
Yep.
And they're treated like campaigns.
Yep.
Right? So you have like these growth teams, fucking growth teams, who come in with their bright ideas and they say, hey, I got a great growth hack. What is that? What is that, you say, Mr. Growth Hacker? Oh, why don't we give away everything to everyone and we'll grow? You're a genius. Fucking awesome. And so they'll come with these ideas of like 2-for-1s, 30%, 10% off, or they'll identify these segments or these whatever, and then they'll have these offers attached to them, and they'll treat them like campaigns, because they'll say, "Oh, I need a master creative for this promo. Oh, I need a design system for my performance marketing campaigns and my digital ad sets." And so these promos become almost positioned as campaigns because they take over, the product, they take over the digital comms, they take over social, they take over performance marketing, they take over CRMs, they take over, you name it. And so they're treated like campaigns. So these promos feel like campaigns now. Yeah. Because you have over-empowered kind of growth teams who have turned discounts and offers into campaigns and how they're executed.
So that's a good way to separate it and frame it, right? If we think about what those offers and promos, that is in theory it's a pricing strategy. So what are my offers of the month? Like, what are my gimmicks, promos that I'm going to run that will run independent of, say, a campaign that's going to focus on a value proposition, or a campaign that's going to be more generic brand focused, and it's going to run independent of the way that we tell stories or tell our story on social media, right? If we were to give the audience, whoever listens, a takeaway, what would we had the 7 framework, right? Which in theory could be put all onto one page, one slide, and you could just populate that each month. Those 7 things that you would want in your marketing mix every single month. You would plan ahead. You wouldn't be doing this slide on the 1st of the friggin' month, nor coming to your agency on the 3rd of the month, asking them to deliver. What would these 7 things be? We have social media.
Yeah.
We have partnerships.
Yeah.
PR.
Yeah. So a few stories.
Yeah, a few stories a month, positioned. Performance marketing.
That's number 4, yeah. With performance marketing is setting the budgets, the channels, the offers, the segmentation, blah, 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 right? And some targets on like what you want your KPIs to perform like.
Partnerships.
Yeah. Strategic partnerships.
Yeah. What are the strategic partnerships? How are we going to communicate them?
Strategic partnerships, to be clear to people, like finding brands that you can partner with and leverage their audiences and vice versa. It's almost like a barter agreement to some extent.
Yep.
That's 5. Number 6.
I haven't got them written in front of me.
It was like campaigning.
It was campaign, yeah.
So every,
what is your...
like you have your always on campaigns and everything like that, but every now and then you need relevant campaigns for relevant audiences.
Yep. What was the final one? Was it email? CRM?
Referrals is what we have. Referrals and, well, leveraging your own audience base, right? And so it's like your audience base being both your clients and the people who kind of, listen to you and care about you on other channels. Those are your 7 kind of things that every brand at a minimum should do every single month. And so, part of what we try to do at DUCKLIFE is to standardize, kind of dumb down a bit the marketing process so that you have some sort of a framework so you can plan ahead 4 months, 5 months, 6 months ahead, right? Like these 7 things are, useful or not, but at least you know that if you're doing these 7 things, you at least have enough happening. Yeah. Right? I mean, you could add tons of that, right? Like if a marketing team has access or influence on product, there should be something you can do on a product side. Yep. If a marketing team has kind of, a growth arm to it, then they're like, okay, what are your growth hacks of the month? Like, what can you do in order to improve your funnel conversion or performance or retention or whatever? There are things you can do there, right? And we were just talking about another one, like your point 10 or point 9 could be, What are your offers or promos, you know, of the month? Right?
Yep.
What are you going to do and who are they for?
Yeah.
But yeah, so these 7 things are not, they're not like the Bible of marketing, right? They're just 7 things that every organization should be doing.
Yeah.
But you could have 15 things if you wanted to.
Yeah,
right?
you could. Because, I mean, ultimately it's determined
like activations. Like, why don't we have activations? Right? Activations
Exactly.
could be something you could do.
And a lot of this is so there's kind of like the stuff that you've got as a brand or as a marketing team, like you have annual objectives of where you're going to try and communicate, right? So you've got these pillars. Now you could base those pillars around seasonal events that you kind of what you were saying, although that's what a lot of people do. So you can kind of think outside of the box a little bit. So you can operate with those pillars of kind of campaigns. But then really it's about communication internally. What is your product? If you're a tech company, what is your product team doing? What are the product features? What's in the funnel? What's new?
I'll just say something that real now. Like, I think people might appreciate this. The first company to celebrate a Mother's Day campaign when it's not Mother's Day is the only brand that wins.
Sorry, say that again.
The first brand out there is a free DUCKLIFE growth hack. Right? If you're a brand and you don't know what campaign to do a Mother's Day campaign when it's not Mother's Day.
Yeah.
You know how much people will love you?
Because you just celebrate mothers every single day.
You're supposed to celebrate mothers every day.
Yeah, true.
So if you don't know what to do, guys, and you're thinking of a really good like campaign, you don't know what to do a giant Mother's Day campaign.
Yeah.
Do a giant Father's Day campaign. Right? Literally, you don't need to be a genius. Just do the biggest ever Mother's Day campaign you could ever do when it's not Mother's Day. And when the press calls you and says, hey, what the fuck? It's not Mother's Day. You're like, exactly. Every day is Mother's Day, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And that's the campaign.
Exactly.
Right? And that's how you, like, that's the problem with these morons. They don't think.
Yeah. Think different.
By the way, if anyone got offended by me calling you a moron, it's because you think you're a moron. I didn't call you a
Oh, think different. Exactly. That's free alpha.
But you know what I mean? Like, but that's fundamentally the issue, right?
So that's so there's a creative issue. So for me, I think, go back to that at the start we said. So for me, there's a strategy issue. There's not planning. There's not thought. There's people are not understanding what their role or what their job is when it comes to marketing and communication. That's one. There's a creative issue, which you touched on. That's a good example of how to be creative. So you can take that, like, just fucking, who cares? Who writes the rules of marketing anyway? Who cares? Just kill all the rules. Like, society has enough rules. Yeah. Scrap them. So that's definitely a challenge. And then then I think when it comes down to this whole budget thing, the financing thing, things don't have to be expensive today. So, like, let's go on to the budget. I was going to talk to the budget thing. Like, we are obsessed with the idea of a campaign being something that costs a lot of money. Now, you have to pay creative agencies or advisors. You know, there is a fee involved if you want creativity, if you want that provided for you, and you should pay that. That's the cost of creativity. But when it comes to, if you have, say you can't afford come to DUCKLIFE, and you want to get creative and create content internally, then you need to shoestring it. So if you look at trends in social media today, and if you look at trends online, rough and ready content, kind of not so much user generated, I think that's an overused term, but kind of using the creative platforms or the tools that are available to you on TikTok, on Instagram, YouTube studios, you can be creative internally without having to overthink a production shoot.
Who needs to be creative internally?
Well, the brands. Or the,
yeah, but who in the brand?
Well, you can. It depends how big your team is. If you have a mini creative department, you can utilize them. Yeah. If you're a one man or one woman show, then you can get creative with those.
That's the problem. I think. I'm sorry to cut you off. I just think one of the biggest issues we have today in marketing and in branding is that this kind of scrappy content creation. Mm-hmm. No one's actually ready to do it. No one wants to put their faith.
So do you
on their own brand?
Yeah. So do you disagree if I said that a marketeer could just do it?
No, I don't. But I'm saying they would disagree.
Yeah.
How many brands do we know don't want to do it themselves?
That's just fact. No, hold on. This is a good debate. Because if you're a lone marketeer in a brand that you don't have ownership in, would you put your face to that brand?
Sorry, say that again. If I was a lone marketeer,
if you're a lone wolf within a small brand,
yeah,
and in order to get scrappy, you need to put your face to that brand. Would you do it?
It depends on the brand.
It does depend on the brand, but why? But then,
like if it was like I don't know, if it was Pizza Hut, no.
No, but then why would you be working it? I mean, I guess it's just if it's more than a job, then you'll do it. If it's just a job, you probably won't. But
That's
you're right.
what I'm saying.
People aren't willing to do it because everyone's afraid of a lot of judgment.
Yeah, and they don't want their face to be out there, right? Because it's so public.
Yeah, it's very public.
You know what I mean? So the scrappy content marketing stuff, like it's different when you're an influencer or you're managing your own page or whatever. It's fucking different. But if you're doing it for a brand day in, day out, and you're the face of the brand, it's kind of like you're signing up to be the mascot. I don't want to be the mascot of my company.
Hold on, yeah, that's a good point.
Right?
If you create content and you're a bit scrappy, you're happy to be hands-on and do stuff yourself, whether you're a content creator for a brand or just yourself. Speak to call me. Because
but fundamentally, that's the issue,
there's a lot
right?
of these people that we would speak to.
How many people and how many brands come to us and say they want to be cool and hip and participate in online content, all this stuff, but they just don't have the willingness to do it themselves.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, like, I get it. Like, I totally get it. So, I mean, I'm not gonna. If I was at, I don't know, I won't name a brand, but if I was at one of these brands and I had to show my face every day and create stories and reels with my own face, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Now there are some brands I would do it for, but most of the brands out there wouldn't.
See, I think,
and I don't think it's fair that marketeers should be given that pressure because, like, they didn't sign up to be mascots. They signed up to be marketeers or content creators. That does not mean mascots.
True. Although I do see the value in doing it because
there are ways in doing it that doesn't reveal who you are. You
Exactly.
can create content that doesn't need a human character in it.
Yeah.
But that's very different. And a lot of these organizations don't have those resources. Illustrators, like real content creators, etc. And, you know, all marketeers out there and all CMOs and CEOs think, oh, just hire a young kid out of college and he'll be basically our bitch and our mascot and he'll make videos for us and make us cool. No, that's not how it works.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right?
So takeaway, good hack. To kind of, if you need to go and create content, like if you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it yourself. Like if you're limited on resources, what would be the best way that you try to create regular content today? Your tip.
So there's two things I would do if I really want to keep it super simple. One is I would try to find ways to create content that don't require my actual identity, right? So, you know, there are many filters, kind of solutions out there that don't necessarily need me to reveal myself and can be based on illustrations or objects or things that don't need to be representative of the person behind the lens, right? That would be number one. Number two is there's ways to engage. You don't need to create content all the time. Sometimes all you need to do is engage with content to get the attention that you need, right? And so one thing that I'm getting more and more frustrated about is the amount of brands that just don't participate, right? So you have a lot of brands that are obsessed with just posting, but they're not reacting or engaging.
Yeah, that was going to be my one. And
so, man, even if you post nothing, right? If all you do is kind of are aware of the conversations and moments where your brand can or, you know, should say something, and you just say them and do them, you know, then you can be extremely, extremely effective at growing your audience and building the popularity of your brand, you know? And so
community management
you
can
don't
be a very
see that
powerful
anymore,
tool.
right? You don't see it anymore. Like, I'll give you a stupid example. I'm not calling them out because I think they're great at social, because I think they could do really, really much better, or they used to be much, much better. But last week, Karim commented on one of my tweets. We were in an article. I wrote a piece, and I was quoted in a piece done by Entrepreneur Middle East, and I retweeted the article, and I said a blurb of something, and Karim said, "Yes, well said." Karim as a brand said that, right? Now, obviously, they probably know who I am, and I used to be there, so they kind of like me or whatever, and they're supporting me or whatever. But I had completely forgotten about Karim. But when they as soon as they commented on my post, I saw them commenting on my post, and I booked a Karim last weekend. I never book Karims anymore because it's way too expensive. But I typically drive myself now because I don't drink anymore. or but normally I don't book them because I find them too fucking expensive. But last weekend I was like, oh, let me take a Kareem. Now, was that the reason why I subconsciously took a Kareem? I don't know. But all I'm saying is they found an opportunity to comment.
And it could have contributed.
It could have contributed to my decision making. Yeah. And so I'm not saying that that's the best way. You're going to have to comment to like 5 million people in order to make your business grow. But what I'm saying is there's so many brands out there that are thinking so hard about what they need to post in order to be seen.
Yep.
Whereas all they have to do is react and have a conversation with other brands or other audiences in order to be seen.
Yeah, and let me just speak to that. One thing that you will guarantee, if I write a content strategy for you, one of those pillars will be all about engagement. And one of the key pieces of content is you will engage with at least 20 conversations per week.
Minimum.
Right? Minimum. But also be realistic. Some brand, if you've got an army of community management, fine. 10x that.
20 a week, man. What are you talking about? It takes you like 4 seconds to find something. It takes you maybe like a minute to write it.
Hold on, 20 conversations a week. But think about where this goes from here. You've got to look at the compounding effects of that.
Sure.
It's not just, you don't just comment like, yes, well said, to dig.
Sure.
You can actually create a conversation off the back of that. So if you're a very small team and you've got one community manager or one social media rep whose job is to create content, manage social calendars, post, you should also be participating in about 20 plus conversations a week.
Yeah,
as a brand.
At a minimum.
At a minimum. And the value that comes from that is the compounding kind of network effects of it. So even though not every conversation will get a reaction, over time, you're gaming the algorithm in your favor because you are participating in the network.
Exactly.
And that is more valuable than pushing 3 posts a week of your message, of your brand onto your audience who specifically follow you. So
the most, just if people don't believe us, the most talked about tweet of the weekend was Elon Musk's response to Walid bin Talal's post about his view of Elon Musk making an acquisition offer to Twitter.
Yep.
Right. So the proof's in the pudding. So the most talked about tweet of the weekend was the response tweet.
Yep.
Right. And so I think credit to Elon and his meme game and his troll game, but brands can do that. Exactly. Brands should do that.
Yeah, because social networks are social. It is a community.
It's not an advertising platform.
Exactly. It's not an advertising platform.
Can't believe we have to say this.
We do. Because why do you not use social media?
Because I'm being advertised to every day.
Exactly. You're constantly disrupting me with your bullshit sales messages.
Yeah.
Instead of actively engaging me, or participating in conversations, or entertaining me, like there's more to social.
Yeah, 100%.
And again, go back to the point of what you said around campaigns. Like, if you're going to create a campaign wrapper or like an extension to your brand when it comes to a visual over a campaign, social media should be treated exactly the same. And so should community management, the whole thing. It's an extension of your brand. Your brand can be different when it's on those platforms. It should still follow the essence of who you are, but your brand should kind of form around the community that's there. Because ultimately the community is the one who will judge your brand. Because your brand doesn't exist, like I said in the last episode.
Exactly.
It's only in your community's mind. Anyway, we could talk about this topic for a while.
Yeah.
I think we'll wrap it.
Yeah, I think let's wrap it up here. And I hope we see kind of marketeers and brands really kind of step their game up. We understand that times are tough, that you're being asked to perform and convert and make revenue. We know those are the KPIs that you're kind of being scrutinized with, but that's fine. Just remember that if you give yourself enough of a runway, enough time to think,
yep.
If you think rationally, if you bring together the departments that you have interdependencies with, which is finance, which is digital marketing, which is creative, which is etc. If you work more cohesively, if you preemptively manage upwards, if you understand your brand, and if you give a shit about your job, you can do better.
Yep.
And this is not a sales pitch, so don't come to us if you're not going to do that. We don't want to speak to you. But if you're ready to think more strategically and do things that are good and everlasting and sustainable for your brand, and you need help, we'd love to help you. But other than that, fuck off.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we give a lot of shit that, like, start this episode to brands, but like we do appreciate the difficulty of the current climate. Like as a brand, we've struggled the last couple of years. Right?
On that note, we urgently need to do a campaign.
We urgently need to do a campaign, and we should brief it now. Like it's urgent.
It's super urgent.